Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored and so wicked happy that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Podbean, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Margot Denemme. She'll be here to tell us all about Celebrate You Inside and Out. Before we invite Margot into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Cookie by Manny Showalter. Lauren has a difficult decision of upholding traditional beliefs and value systems that have been taught to her by her parents, or giving in to what her school crush Robbie wants. In an ideal world, Lauren would take heed of her parents' warnings about sex, but peer pressure and her infatuation with Robbie are making her challenge everything she knew to be true. Guys are nothing but trouble. Or are they? Read the story of Lauren and Robbie to see what decision she will make. We all know that talking to our kids about sex and about decisions regarding sex can be difficult. Manny Showalter wrote The Cookie as a way for parents to begin this very important conversation with their kids. You can learn all about it at the ShowalterFoundation.org website. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Abigail's Dragons by Patrick Matthews. It's a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Abigail's Dragons is about a girl who wakes up in a cave and discovers that she has a healing magic. She's told that her magic is growing, that it will turn her into a monster if left unchecked. And she's not alone in the cave. There are other kids also with magic who are kept asleep. Though only 11, she dedicates herself to protecting them, healing them, and draining away their magic to keep them safe. But what if she is lied to? What if her cave of healing is actually a prison? How can she save the sleepers when she doesn't even know how to save herself? Find out today by getting you and your family a copy of Abigail's Dragons by Patrick Matthews, a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Join us right now for one of the coolest cities in the world. I haven't visited all of them, but Toronto and the beautiful nation of Canada is absolutely one of the coolest cities around. Our guest is here today to celebrate you inside and out. Please welcome to the show, Margot Denemme. Hey, Margot, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I just love having an opportunity to talk to folks from Toronto because it is such a really cool city. It's really diverse. I don't know if people always think about diversity when they think of Canada, but certainly Toronto is one of the most diverse places I've been to. And not just that there are a lot of different folks from different cultures, but you're really integrated. You know, it's not like, oh, those folks over there and those folks over there and we're over here. It's like, yeah, we're all over.
Yes, absolutely. It has so many great qualities, for sure.
Yeah. So tell us about this movement, this brand that you have, Celebrate You. I love that idea.
And it really is a Celebrate You movement. You've absolutely captured it. So I'll tell you a bit about how I came to write the books that I wrote. Mm-hmm. I have worked as a criminal lawyer for over 20 years. And so in the criminal justice system, I've seen a lot of the results of low self-esteem. So, and the consequences that result with poor choices. So while I was raising my daughters, I also realized just how inundated they were with photoshopped images of movie stars and people that were not even real. And I thought, well, that can't help but affect their self-esteem if they're looking at and comparing themselves to people that don't even exist. So that was a lot of, those two reasons were a lot of the motivation that I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to write a book that could facilitate a dialogue with parents, and teachers, and grandparents and children, to teach them that true beauty comes from within. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. So in 2013, I published Mummy Am I Pretty? And since then, I've been to over 100 schools in both Canada and the U.S., and it is my Celebrate You tour / movement.
Yeah. Wow. I was sharing with Margot before we started recording that I've been doing educational magic shows around the country for over 30 years. What I didn't share with her, because I didn't realize that she was a criminal lawyer, is the reason I got into that, well, right before I got into that, I was working within the criminal justice system. And I was working with kids both in a number of different areas. I was working with kids in secure facilities, so kids who were incarcerated at the time. And then we're also working with kids as they were being reintegrated into the community. And I was working with kids who made some horrific choices that hurt themselves and hurt their communities and hurt individuals. Mm-hmm. And I was being told that I was doing a great job doing it, but boy, it was really beating me up, trying to help these kids get back from this deep, dark hole that they had buried themselves in. And when I turned to performing as a clown and as a magician, one of the reasons I embraced it is because I realized that I could address the things that I was trying to address with the kids in the juvenile justice system, help build up their self-esteem or rebuild it. And I could be proactive and go out on stage and use my magic to kind of go, yo, kids, before you go down that dark road, realize how special you are. Realize that you are loved. Realize that we need you, and you have so much to contribute.
100%. That's exactly was my motivation as well. I thought everything we see in the criminal justice system is reactive. Mm-hmm. Well, let's be proactive. Let's talk. So Mummy Am I Pretty factors in the 6 factors that have been proven to bolster self-esteem. Things such as kindness, developing a passion, being brave enough to try new things, and acknowledging that we all make mistakes, and that's okay. That's the way we learn. So in my Celebrate You tour, we take the time to discuss all of the factors that are proven to bolster self-esteem. So I couldn't agree more with you. It sounds like we were motivated from the same end, because it is very difficult once children have made poor choices to grab them back on the right road. But when you can go and speak to kids, and if one point, resonates with them, and you can make a difference in that one child, then in my mind, you've been a major success.
Yeah. And I agree with you, but the thing that I found so difficult while I was working within that system was, it was really hard to kind of rebuild the kids' self-esteem after they had made those mistakes. But even if you could rebuild their self-esteem and help them get on the right paths, to borrow an old phrase, this community really didn't want them back. That was the thing that was so frustrating with me. It's like, hey, this kid has done his time and he's made some changes and he's grown incredible. And school systems would be like, I don't care. We're terrified of him. Don't want him back. Families, same way. And so, we have to catch, we have to catch the kids before they make the mistakes.
Well, and I think one of the major problems that kids are facing right now is that there is such an inundation of social media, of influencers. Everywhere they look, it's white noise. But the problem we're not providing them with the tools to help them navigate through the crazy world right now. And we wonder, or maybe we don't wonder, but depression and anxiety is at an all-time high for them. It was bad before COVID, but now with COVID that led to the isolation and the nonstop, going through their social media feeds and seeing all the influencers and looking like everybody has it all going on. So when I attend the schools, the first thing I do is I talk about being a criminal lawyer. I talk about seeing the results of low self-esteem with the children. And then I talk about how it's very dangerous for us to look at influencers, to look at movie stars. And I show them pictures of movie stars who've been photoshopped, movie stars that they would recognize. And I say, we all run the dangerous line of looking at these people and wondering why we don't have perfectly well-coiffed hair or white teeth or no wrinkles or whatever the case might be. And I think it's really important because if we don't educate kids at a young age, who's going to tell them that these people are not looking that way? Why not have a dialogue? Why not call out the elephant in the room so that at least we build awareness? When I first published my book, I was speaking at a number of different schools, and our national broadcasting system, CBC, published the speech that I did with the kids and covered the photoshopped images. And I can tell you, so many parents contacted me to thank me for educating their children about photoshopped images because it's something that they just never thought of doing. Mm-hmm. But it really made an impact that when they were driving around, they would look at billboards and their young son or daughter at 6 or 7 or 8 years old were saying, "Look, Mom, that's not a real photo. That's Photoshop because of this, that, and the other thing." Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important that we speak to kids in an honest way, because there's just too many pressures that they're facing. And that's what I hope my book, Mummy Am I Pretty, and Awesome Inside Note, they will facilitate that dialogue to talk about these important things.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I think we have to remember too is that we feed a lot of this when our kids are young, because as parents, we're like, "Oh, you're so beautiful, you're adorable, we love you, and you look so cute today," and and it's very innocent. We just want to let our kids know how much we love them. And when my daughter, who is a very beautiful young woman now, but when she was a baby, I remember people would come over and just make such a big deal about her blue eyes, and there was this one waitress who came over, and she must have really needed a big tip, but she came over and she dropped her tray and she goes, "Oh my goodness, your daughter's so beautiful. She took my breath away." And my daughter just kind of looked at me. She was like maybe 2-3 years old, and kind of gave me a look like, "That's silly." And that day we had a conversation, and I reminded her, I said, "Yeah, it's neat that you're pretty and people think that you're pretty, but you really didn't have anything to do with that. It's more important for you to be pretty on the inside and beautiful on the inside." And that's something she really embraced. And
right.
I'm really happy that I had that instinct, or was inspired. I had a message from above, just kind of whisper in my ear and say, "Hey, teach this to your kid."
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's all about balance, right? Mm-hmm. It's not to say you can never compliment somebody when they've dressed up and they feel really good. It's all about balance between the inside and out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm curious, as a criminal defense lawyer, you must have been incredibly busy. Where did you find the time to sit down and just to say, "Well, I'm also going to add being a children's author to my resume"?
It happened over a prolonged period of time, and it was the thought, the idea, the concept that the book is not all that long. So and my daughters at the time were taking art lessons. And so I started to incorporate their artwork in the story that I wanted to tell. So by the time it combined and I met with the people that could assist me in putting the book together, it took about a year but very fragmented throughout that year. And then I, at the time, had no idea that it was going to become a speaking tour, literally by word of mouth. That's what led to from one school to the other. And as I said, when I pull it up to a school and thought, if I can impact the way one child looks at themselves through my speech today, then it's been proven successful. And I'll tell you one of the highlights of one of the schools I went to was a little girl who came up to me after we discussed Mommy Am I Pretty and all the important messages in it. And she said, I have to thank you for writing the book because I've never thought that I was pretty. But now that you've taken the time to explain to me what pretty means, I think I might be. And I just want to give you a hug. So that was the one girl that day. And honestly, it's just been such a rewarding journey and one that I never anticipated.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I love that you helped this young girl come to realize that the definition of pretty, what most of us think is pretty and beautiful, it's really limited. And that beauty and being pretty and being attractive, there's much more to it than just the surface. And I'm so thankful that you were able to teach not only her, but I'm sure lots of kids throughout both of our countries that message.
Well, and you'll love this story because it's truly Canadian. When I speak to the kids about developing a passion and finding something that they love to do, and I say, you might try out for a team. It doesn't mean you're going to make every team. It's important that you try. And it's called Mommy Am I Pretty? But at the beginning, I always say to the boys, look, the messages in this book are for boys and girls. And it's Mommy Am I Pretty? Because I wrote it with my daughters. Anyway, so after giving the lesson that you can try out for teams, you're not going to make every team. Young Isaac in the corner at the end of my book talk, I said, what did you learn from Mommy Am I Pretty? And he said, I learned that if I try out for the Canadian hockey team and I don't make it, I can always try out for the U.S. team, and that's okay too. And you know what? In my mind, I thought, isn't that great? That's what Isaac needed to take from my book. That's all good. That's all good. That's where I lost him. He was already winning the Stanley Cup. It was great.
I love it. Yep. If I can't make it here in Canada, I can always go down the minor leagues down in the United States.
So honestly, like you with the magician world, working with kids and seeing the innocence and seeing how they really do cherish you being there. And it's so important and you're so impactful and you're in this position that you can be proactive with these messages because you have a captive audience and you can see that what you're doing and what you said to them and what I'm saying to them is resonating. Oh my God. Like there's no price on it, right?
Yeah. And I'm glad we have a lot of authors who listen to the program, and I just want to take a moment to kind of talk a little bit about what you do when you're in front of an audience. A lot of authors, they hear that, oh, there's this thing called school visits, and I might get invited to go and visit a school, and I'll sit in a rocking chair in front of the kids, and I'll read my book, and that'll be great. And no, that's not what schools want. They want and they want a show isn't the right, but they want a presentation. They want something that maybe based on your book, and maybe reading your book is going to be part of it, but there has to be some real meat, real substance where there's a beginning, a middle, and end, and kids can leave there and walk away from the experience with more than, oh, I met the lady who wrote that picture book.
100%. And that's why I moved from an author visit to workshops because they are so engaging. As I indicated, speak to them about being a criminal lawyer, speak to them, like that's where I engage the boys too. Once they learn that I work with police officers every day, they're in, whether it's pink and Mommy Am I Pretty or not. And I speak to them about poor choices and then I move into the education about the photoshopped images, and I show them about 10 images of movie stars that they all know. And as I mentioned, the dangers of comparing themselves. Then as I read the book, we also stop and discuss. Like, I get them on their feet talking about the last thing that they did when they were kind. And then everybody's sharing kindness, and we celebrate and we clap. So I walk through everyone. And one of the important lessons that I focus on is the fact that we all have a little nagging negative voice in our head, and how we can turn that into a positive. I think that's really important, because we all don't talk about the little voice inside our heads that could have been saying, Margot, you're a criminal lawyer. You're not a children's book author. Just knock it off, and think about how limiting my life would have been because of the little voice that tells you what you are. So acknowledging that to children, they're old enough to understand, that. And we have a great discussion about that. Also sharing their passions, whether it be music or art or sports, whatever their passion is. So by the end of it, they've been actively engaged in the discussion, and they see what really builds a beautiful person from within. And it has nothing to do with the exterior of the person. And so after all of my visits, I was asked, when are you going to do a more inclusive book? And just before COVID, that was when Awesome Inside and Out was published. So I haven't really been doing a lot of workshops in that regard yet, but there certainly are starting to ramp up now that we're seeing a bit of a lull in the COVID. It's, it's gone.
Thankfully, yes.
Yeah, let's just say it's gone.
One of the things I wanted to circle back on is just this idea that one of the factors that helps build our self-esteem is being kind to others. Isn't it? And I think that that's such an important message for kids to hear, that there's a value. We get something out of being kind. And it's not that we should be trying to motivate kids to, you're going to get brownie points if you're kind. It's just like, hey, this is the way that we were made. The kinder we are, the better we're going to feel about ourselves.
Yeah. And I say there's scientific proof that we get a helper's high just by helping someone. Like, how awesome is that, right? And when they get so excited and proud when they tell everybody what they did to be kind to one another. Yeah. The other point on that is talking about being inclusive. And I always say, like, who is new at this school this year, and what happened that somebody included you in their group? 9 times out of 10, they're sitting near that person that included them the first day. And it's a great story, because I explained, we're all going to start new jobs. And when you walk into a new job, everyone's nervous, no matter how old you are. So just acknowledging all of those things and having a good discussion with them, it's just a lot of fun. It really is.
Margot, you reminded me, I was doing a presentation one time, and at the end of the show I was taking questions, and this little, I remember her, she just had blonde hair. I mean, that was the thing that was so stark. She was teeny weeny, but just long blonde hair, and she stood up and she said, Mr. Jedley, I just want to say, when I came in the beginning of school, I was new here and I didn't know anybody, and Tommy was my friend, and stood up and wanted me. And Tommy didn't hear the whole thing. He just said, I didn't do anything to her. No, I didn't. I'm like, no, dude, chill. She likes you. She's saying you're a good guy.
A little bit of a nervous reaction. It's all good, Tommy.
I need my lawyer. No.
That's hilarious.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Well, there is actually, you're in Boston. There is a social emotional learning app called Kakori that has just featured me as a creator, featured the books, and they actually have lessons in the books in their app from my books, which has been wonderful. And they're out of New Hampshire, and it's Kakori. So it's been great working with them as well.
That's fantastic. So you have 2 books available right now. Are you planning on writing a third and beyond?
I believe the next will be a workbook. I think workbooks are really important because then they're going to be able to monitor how they're doing, how they're feeling about self-esteem. And I think that's where my next focus is going to be. As the workshops continue to gain in popularity, I think I would like to have a workbook that I can, we can do some of this as we talk. Yeah. And I should mention, you asked the part of the workshop as well. And at the end, after we talked about the self-esteem, I actually walked through the steps of publishing a book with kids. And that's an important part, I think, because I make sure that they know that I may have written the book, even though it's short, maybe 50 to 100 times once you get an editor and a graphic designer. So I I say when you finish a project, if the older that they get, you have to always submit your best work. So we have a conversation about that as well. So it's an important piece. And then I have the prototypes to the actual book, and I show them how you actually design it. So that piece is always really important, because then they all have their hand up to tell me what book they're writing.
Awesome.
So it always engages in a great discussion.
Awesome. Well, I have my hand up now because I want you to tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you and find out more about the Celebrate You Inside and Out movement.
Perfect. My website is celebrateyouinsideout.com. And the books are available at Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. And please be in touch with me. I would be happy to come to your school, your community group, or wherever to share this important movement, because I think it's now more important than ever. Absolutely.
Absolutely. We've had a wonderful time talking about just how wonderful our kids are and just how wonderful you are, both inside and out. And our guest has been Margot Denemme. Hey, Margot, thanks so very much for being with us.
Thank you so much. I've really appreciated it.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be national recording artist Rhett Miller. He'll be here to celebrate the Baby Changing Station. It's a hilarious picture book. Rhett is a hilarious guest and a really charming person. You don't want to miss it. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, we know that we have an awful lot of authors listening to the show, and we want to invite all of the authors to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how we can help you celebrate your book. You can be a guest here on the podcast and in a long-form conversation, just like Margot did. Tell the world all about your book. Tell the world all about you, your inspirations. Let them know about your brand. Being a guest is fun, it's easy, and it doesn't cost a thing. You can also find out about our Certified Great Read program. You heard earlier in the show that Abigail's Dragons is one of our latest Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Reads. We would love to be able to award that status to your book. And if our panel believes that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read. We would also love for you to check out our monthly promotion program. We can celebrate your book with commercials here in the podcast, with messages to our 99,000 plus social media followers, and also display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. And if we are participating in a live event, we will display your book in our booth at that event. Learn all about that and more at readingwithyourkids.com. And, of course, click on that Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Margot Denemme. Please be sure to check out Celebrate You Inside and Out. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Belcastro, Ashley Contreras, Mirabella Q, Rain Penn. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.